Go ahead.
Hey everybody, it's Katrina Matheson from the Toronto Schools Caregiver Coalition.
And Jennifer Wong from the Fund Our Schools campaign.
And we're here today to talk to you about crafting your school board delegation. So the goal of this session is to learn how to craft your delegation. So first of all, some tips for delegating. Usually, as we've said before, delegations can be delivered in person or by phone or online. You can check with your board on exactly what they allow. Usually 3 to 5 minutes are granted to delegates. Keep in mind that trustees may ask you questions after you make your statement, so it may go a little longer than 3 to 5 minutes. And the order of delegations is usually dependent on when you submit your form, or sometimes they might ask you to indicate a window. Again, it just depends on what your board's process is. If you're delegating by phone, you may have to follow along using your school board's live stream or being on a Zoom, whatever instructions they give you. So you can also submit a written delegation. If you can't attend or if you are a bit shy, a written delegation is also very impactful. Written delegations are typically circulated to the trustees during the meeting or just at the front end of the meeting. And so you actually have to submit your delegation a few days beforehand to ensure that it gets into that packet. Usually you can submit delegations afterwards as well, and those do get circulated later, but it's nice to be in the main agenda packet if you can do it. Okay, so creating a memorable delegation. I would like to present to you an analogy of a sandwich. So when you're thinking about, how to put this together, obviously the reason that you might come to delegate, it's going to be personal. There's something that's really motivating you. There's something you feel in your heart that really compels you to go and speak about it. And that's a really important and powerful emotion. And you want to make sure that your delegation captures that. And so when you think about actually putting it on paper, think about a sandwich. So the top bread is that emotional, that hook, that connection, that that just really personal thing that brings you there. Obviously, it's up to you how personal you want to get. But tell us a little story. Just in a few sentences. What happened to your child? How were they affected? How were you affected? How did it affect your family? What was it that in the pit of your stomach? What was that moment where you knew you had to say something to someone about this? This was a problem. That's what you want to capture in that first opening bit. Next slide. So the next bit is sort of, let's call it the lettuce, tomato, and onions, the garnish, right? And so we want to, I like to think of those as my facts and figures, right? And that's because you don't want a delegation that's like all facts and figures. Facts and figures are super useful and super helpful, but they're good when they're really targeted, when there's like one or two. You don't want like something overloaded with onions. You don't want a sandwich that's overloaded with onions, right? You don't want like way too many tomatoes, right? You want a little bit here, a little bit there, so you can taste it, and it's something that you remember, but it's not overpowering. It's not, we don't have to sit through, long lists of statistics and numbers. So, think about why is, this thing that led you to delegate, why is it happening? What do the numbers say? Are there statistics on it? Has there been changes over time? Have things gotten worse? Those are the kind of numbers that you want to present. Okay, so then there's the mayo and the mustard, right? And so I would say the mayo and the mustard is our uniting message. And for the purposes of Fund Our Schools and for my group, Toronto Schools Caregiver Coalition, the uniting message is that no more cuts for my personal thing that I'm experiencing, but also no more cuts for anyone. No more cuts for any student at any school, anywhere. No one should experience cuts. Because the problem that we've had in the past, with this budgeting process that we have, is that inevitably, because the trustees can't access additional money from the province, they can't appeal, they can't negotiate, they're just left with this finite pool of money. And so if, one group wants their, aquatic instructors saved, that means that someone else is going to lose something else. And so there's this, they call it a zero-sum game, right? It's like someone wins and someone loses. And that's not that's not a great way to run a school, run a school board. Our students, they need support, they need attention, they need their needs met. And if you're operating in this sort of zero sum kind of scarcity paradigm, it's going to be harmful for our kids, and ultimately it's not going to work very well. So an example of our uniting message is that student needs are already not being met. Conditions in our schools are already poor. Children are already unsafe. They've been abandoned in their classroom, right? 70 million more in cuts, or whatever the number might be for your board. Making more cuts anywhere in the system is going to stress our kids too much. It's going to stress our classrooms too much. It's going to stress the teachers. We cannot make any more cuts. The system cannot handle it. It's immoral. Okay. Okay, so then we want to think about the center, right? The center is our meat and cheese, like the kind of the meat of it. So, again, you're coming into it, you want to frame it in the context of no cuts for anyone, but you also have something, very particular that you want to say. And so you have to think very carefully about what your ask is. What are you asking for? Think tangibly, can there be a motion to speak to this? What specific change can be made? These are the kinds of things that you want to think about, and you want to leave them with an ask. And as I said, a good example, no cuts in my school and no cuts for anyone's school. Don't make any cuts. Like, we need to push back. We need to push back on the province and make sure that our student needs are met and pass a no cuts budget. Okay, and then finally the closing, right? The bottom part of the sandwich. It's great if you can leave with a reminder of something that emotional hook from the beginning. If you just kind of, just mention it in a brief passing, in a, just even reference your child, just reference something that you brought up in the introduction part. It's just nice to leave them with something that they remember that calls back that emotion that we felt at the beginning. So anyway, here's the summary. The top red is your story, your emotional pull. The lettuce, tomato, and onion are your facts and figures. The mustard and mayo is that uniting message, right? The kids are suffering. More cuts won't work. Don't cut anywhere. And then the center is, whatever your specific ask might be, along with passing a no cuts budget, whatever policy change or system change you might want to see. And then the bottom red just reminds us of that emotion that we felt in the beginning. Jen, you want to take this one?
Sure. So, every board will be different. This is just an example of the TDSB delegation request form. Katrina had mentioned before, you have to specify which committee you want to delegate at, on what particular agenda item. Sometimes you don't even have to write the agenda item. There is an open delegation call. Sometimes they give you a window to delegate, a window of time. So you can specify the time. Otherwise, you might have to live stream your committee meeting on your phone or on a computer, so you know when to jump right in. And like she said before, usually 2, maybe 3 days before their meeting, you have to submit this delegation form. And this is just an example. Katrina, do you want to explain this timeline here, or it's pretty...
Yeah, so in this picture here, basically, I was indicating on the 23rd, this was in April, on the 23rd, there was a governance and policy meeting at 4:30 p.m. And so the deadline, they were delegating on the 23rd, the deadline was actually 4 p.m. on the 21st to submit your form. And so the next meeting was on the 29th, it was 4:30 p.m. special finance meeting. It was on a Tuesday, so 2 days before. It was going to put the deadline at the 25th, Friday, the 25th at 4 p.m. They ended up extending the deadline to Monday morning. So sometimes that can happen. It can get extended a bit, but, just be mindful of the rules that, usually it's a couple days before that you need to get the form in.
Thank you. Thanks, Katrina.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording.